Hello, and welcome to the Card Combo Show with me, Choco Billy. Alright, so the first card I want to talk about is Shuyin 6-112H. So it's not a... well, this card never gets any play, and there are two big factors behind that. Its cost, or rather its power, and its text. So basically the card. So Shuyin's text reads, when Shuyin enters the field, choose one forward with a power inferior to Shuyin's. You gain control of this forward until the end of the turn. So, two big problems with that text is that it's power inferior to Shuyin's, so it's only a 6k forward you get to take control of, and it's only until the end of the turn. If you take control of it and it is dulled, it stays dull in your control, and it can only attack if it's got haste. So, you know, your options are limited unless your opponent has a brave haste, which naturally I don't think there were any. The only things that you could have that might do that would be Go-Go, but then that would require you to have the correct forwards in the break zone for him to gain. But yeah, so he's not a fantastic card, but ever since he came out, I've always enjoyed using him and finding ways to put him into decks, and I did actually create a deck, which not centered around Shuyin, but he was a key part. So before you play your Shuyin, the first thing you want to do is play Bismarck. Now if you've got Yun on the field, he'll only cost 1, but you half that your opponent's forward power. Even if they're at 12k, which is pretty high by most forwards' power, it still becomes a 6. Actually, it's choose one forward, halve its power until the end of the turn, round down to the nearest 1000. So that means if it's 13k, you actually get to take it as well, because it'll still become 6. But yeah, so you half its power. If you only pay for the one Bismarck, perfect. Or only pay one full Bismarck even. Then use Star Sybil to play Shuyin, because paying 5 for Shuyin is just not acceptable. But the fact that Star Sybil can search something to kind of recur her own value, and then you just break her to play Shuyin onto the field. So far you've broken her back up and you've paid 1 to take control of an opponent's forward. As I mentioned earlier, obviously taking control of a forward is pretty useless unless you use Famfrit. So obviously this is only really useful if your opponent's got a couple of forwards. So you'd have to take their forward and then Famfrit and you get rid of both. That's fantastic. So obviously again, if you've got Yun on the field, he only costs 2, so you've now broken a back up and you've paid 3 to take control of your opponent's forward and break both that and one of the other forwards. Now, another card, and the card that I'm about to show you, is the reason I built this deck. It's Kefka. Now, I really like Kefka. I think he's I mean, look at that card. That design is just awesome, but it's a nuts card in and of itself. Like, when Kefka attacks, choose one forward you control and one forward your opponent controls. Break them. So, you take control of one of their forwards, you attack with Kefka, you've broken 2 of their forwards, and there's an attack on the stack for them to deal with. Obviously, there are a variety of different ways that your opponent can interrupt this, but ultimately, I think it's just awesome. Also, if you've got a Walker on the back lineup, that will buff Shuyin a little bit, so that means he can naturally gain 7k, or can take control of 7ks as well. But yeah, that's the setup I like to use with Shuyin. Right, the next card I want to talk about is Tilika. This came out this set, and I think she's a decent card. So, dull, the cost required to play your characters onto the field this turn is reduced by 1. It cannot become 0. You can only use this ability once per turn. So, I like Tilika, she's really cool, but you need to play her in a deck where you're going to be reducing the cost of more than one thing, generally more than one, or in the same turn. Because if you are just reducing the cost by 1 of one thing, and playing it that same turn, you basically just paid that 1 CP with Tilika rather than reducing the cost of it. So, something she works, and I can't be the only person to have thought this, something she works really well with is Jessie. Jessie's already played heavily, I mean, she's basically the focal point of why 7 decks can be so strong. Making Cloud or Barret reduced by 1, you dull Tilika, you've now reduced them by 2. That is so strong. So playing Big Boy Barret, playing him onto the field for 3, that's good. Now, if you play the new Cloud onto the field, he's not a fantastic, he's not amazing, he's not as good as some of the other Clouds, but he searches you a Category 7 character. If you've paid 2 for him, he's already recurred his value. But then, if you were to say search yourself a Tifa, she now only costs 1. That's crazy. You've paid 2 for Cloud to search Tifa to then play Tifa for 1. You've just gained 2 forwards for 3 CP. Technically, you've had to double Tilica, so 4 CP. That's still really, really good. And if you've got Zangan on the back lineup, then obviously Tifa can go swinging. She's brave. If you've got Enacro, Tifa and Barret will be large. Another Cloud that works well with, though, is this Cloud. Again, he would only be 1 CP. That's so good. The fact that you could, I don't know, play Barret for 3, Cloud for 1, Tifa for 1. That's effectively 6 CP to play 3 forwards. That's really good. Another setup it works well with is, well, I say works well with, is Mirror. It's something else to kind of take into effect, is that Mirror can reduce the cost of your monsters by 1, and obviously Tilica has characters. And if you're an Earth, then you might as well be running like Kikus, or Kikus, however you say his name. You could be playing something along the lines of like a Gigas, so it would cost you 4, but it then becomes a 2, or there's Luminous Puma. Bring it down from a 3 cost to a... bring it down from a 5 cost to a 3 cost even, sorry, I had to think about that. That's even more value, so that's really good. Something else that works well is Glauca. So obviously that's reducing all your lightning forwards by 1, and lightning loves to flood the field. So you could have Glauca on the field and double your Tilica to then, I don't know, play Alcid for 2 to bring something in, to then, I don't know, play another Hasty Boy, or there's so many different things. Judge of Wings, that'd be pretty cool, because this cost gets reduced as well by every 2 lightning summons in your break zone, so to reduce it even more, nice. Something you do not want to run it with is a card like Edge, where it reduces the cost of something. So the cost required to play on Job Ninja or Card Name Ninja onto the field is reduced by 1 and can be paid with CP of any element. Now notice how it doesn't say is reduced by 1 but cannot become 0. These can become 0. However, Tilica states it cannot become 0. So Tilicas cannot overwrite anything that says can, or allows something to be that. Because there aren't any cards that actually state can. You can say may do X thing, but yeah, ultimately Tilicas cannot overwrite the ability to become 0. So don't run Tilica alongside Edge or Waff with Rain, that sort of thing. Not that you really would. It wouldn't really work well alongside those cards, but it's just food for thought. Right, the next card is another card from this set, is Realm. Now, when this card came out, I think everyone that liked running monsters went a bit nuts, because she's pretty powerful for what she can do. But the first thing that I went to when she was released, so when Realm enters the field, you may search for up to 1 monster of cost 1 and up to 1 monster of cost 2, and play them onto the field. I did that with, and I've got a deck based around this, Skeleton and Black Knight. So she comes into the field, Skeleton and Black Knight come on, and Black Knight is, you know, he's a pain to deal with. Generally, your opponent's having to play something to break Black Knight, so they have to put some sort of sacrificial one out there. It can be a bit annoying if they play something like Porum. Sorry, I got the 2 names mixed up there. Porum. So, you know, that breaks your Black Knight and they ultimately get a summon back. They've paid 2 to retrieve a summon. It's not the worst thing in the world for them, but it is still something that they have to take into consideration. But what's also good is the fact that Black Knight will give Skeleton a monster token when he enters. So you've already got Skeleton with 1 monster token on. Now, you combo this into Urianger. Urianger is a damn fine card with Skeleton, because if, say, you Realm into Skeleton and Black Knight, and then you play Urianger to bring, say, another Skeleton onto the field, or if you've got more Scions, bring something else onto the field, provided it's Lightning, Skeleton, the first one, is now online. So you've paid 7 CP, and you've got, albeit 2 small forwards, but you've got a Skeleton online to break a 4 cost even. You've got Black Knight online to kill something as well, and whatever Urianger brings in, probably another Skeleton, that would be pretty decent. For 7 CP, I think that's quite good. The one issue is that with Urianger himself is easily killed, so you could play him and be like, oh, I'm going to get a Skeleton of 1 cost. Urianger could then, in response to his activation, be killed. He then can't get anything, so it can be a bit of a nightmare, but I really like this play. I've done it a few times, and it's really fun. Something else also works well with it is, say, you Realm into Black Knight and Skeleton. You can then Alcid with Onion Knight, so chances are, I mean, it's 9 CP you've paid, that is a lot of cards from hand, but you've gained 3 forwards. You're probably killing a few things. So you Alcid into Onion Knight, that'll kill something, that then gets Skeleton online to kill something, and you've got the Black Knight ready to take something out when it enters the field. So that's really good. Another thing you can also do as well is if you're in mono water is you can bring in Adamantoise. There's only 2 1-cost water monsters, which are Adamantoise and Tonberry, which breaks a searching forward. No, breaks a searching backup. Breaks a searcher, actually. I think it's just mainly a character that searches. And then Sahuagin Chief. So Sahuagin Chief will then get a water token, and then you combo that with something like Gao maybe to bring another monster into the field. That will then get Sahuagin Chief to 3. This is nowhere near as effective as the lightning variant, which I just showed you, because you're paying 10 and all you're going to be doing is bouncing things really, and the other monsters aren't that great, so yeah. But it's, you know, cool ideas and cool combos. Right, another slightly older card, only a couple of sets back now, but it's Terra. If a forward is dealt damage by your summons, the damage increased by 2,000 instead. So the first thing that everyone thought about when this card came out was, yay, Mumba! Mumba now is an outright kill. I mean, you buff Mumba's damage by 1 anyway. There's nothing your opponent can do. They buff it. In response to Mumba, Mumba still does the damage, but buffed. So it's an insta-kill, right? But it's an EX. If you've got Terra on the field, that's really cool to hit. It's just awesome. But it can also work well with Ifrita. So you deal 3k to the board, make that 5k. If you've got Vermilion Bird, Kaituna, that'll become 6k. The 6k board wipe ain't nothing to be sneezed at. So you can have Terra on the field, you pay the 6 to play a Vermilion Bird, to then bring in Ifrita to deal 6k to the board. That's pretty decent. It's not the best thing in the world, but, you know, there are a lot of smaller forwards being run at the moment. Generally, if they are smaller, it will be a larger board state. So, obviously, the classic is Vikings. You've got your Layla, your Viking, probably Porum. They're all just sat there, and they're ready to block. It's still good value for them, because obviously the things are dying, but you've got rid of their field presence. So that's still something, at least. Also works with Pandemonium, that new card that got released in set 11. So you can be dealing up to 4k, or if your opponent's on 5 points of damage, that's a 6k board wipe. Again, not something to be sneezed at. For paying 1, which then can reactivate your backup, that's really good. The one thing to bear in mind with Pandemonium is that if you do select a backup, because you don't have to, or if you do choose a backup, sorry, and they can then do something to that backup, they can break it, Pandemonium's effect won't go off because all targets that he had have been lost and therefore fizzles. And then it's also nice, Terra is just a nice little buffer to other summons, so like Phoenix, for example. And Fire Ice is not an uncommon combo with things like Laswell, and the 6 engine as well is obviously really good for that. So she fits into the 6 engine. And yeah, it'd be a nice counter against something like Velthanos, because you then have a Phoenix, so it's 7 CP, so it's going above the amount that he would cancel, and we'll be dealing 10k. Pretty decent. Right, a contender for one of my favourite cards in the game, Varn, 5-145L. I love this card, I've played him a lot. He's not a fantastic card, I'll admit it, but I really, really like him. So, when Varn attacks, select up to 2 of the 5 following actions. Draw a card, choose one backup, activate it, choose one forward, dull it, choose one forward, it gains 2,000 power on the turn, or choose one forward, it cannot block this turn. So, provided he attacks, he can make 2 things not block. Dull one, and then the other one can't block, or you can activate a backup, or you can draw a card. There's so many different things that he can do. But a card that he works well with is Snow, because you attack with him, and this is the thing, is that if you attack with him, if you ever get the chance to, you've then moved 3 things out of the way potentially. Even if your opponent's got a wide field, that can still get past it. That's really, really cool. Or if you know, you just want to dull 2 things out of the way, work it in ice, you dull 2 things out and then draw a card maybe. Oh look, you just happen to top deck a Zalera, then let's kill those things you just dulled. You know, that can work quite nicely. Now, I did mention it's if you get him to survive. Velthanos or White Tiger Lassie are probably reasonable if you want to try and have a deck focused around Varn, which you won't do because that never happens. But having a deck with Velthanos, or with Varn, you want Velthanos or White Tiger Lassie or something like that to keep him alive, because he's going to die pretty quickly. It's also worth running in something like Fire, where you can haste him quite quickly. You pay 5 for Varn. If you Belias, that's not bad, you get a card back. He's then also First Strike as well at 9k. That's quite scary to have to deal with. Again, he can die fairly easy, just like a typical Diablos or something like that. But, you know, it's a good way to force your opponent to do something. Or Sage as well. But another good fire card that he works well with is obviously Yotsuyu. You've made it so 2 things can't block, you can dull something. It's similar to Snow, but obviously you have to pay for Yotsuyu's ability. What you could do, though, is you can make it so something can't block, reactivate a backup on the stack, Yotsuyu, and then Yotsuyu again. So you can make it so 3 things can't block. Obviously, you could be doing that with a Dull, but it might be a case that your opponent's in wind or water where they can reactivate their stuff fairly easily, so you're just going to make it so flat out they can't block. Right, another card that I like that came out this set is Cloud 11-136S. So I think something that got missed the first few times I'm reading was Dull, put 1 category 7 forward into the break zone, search 1 forward that costs 1 CP more than the forward you put into the break zone, players onto the field, you can only use his ability during your main phase. He can search any 1 forward with a cost of 1 CP more. So when I first saw him, I was like, oh yeah, you can, I don't know, put 4 CP 7 forward into the break zone and bring in Barret, something like that. You can put 4 CP Barret into the break zone and bring in 5 CP Barret, but I didn't realise that he could bring in any forward. So that got me to thinking, what stupid combos can you do with it? Now, this probably isn't the first time that people have thought of this, but this is the combo I like, and it's disgusting. You play Sephi onto the field, make your opponent discard 2 cards. Gross. Dull Cloud, put Sephi into the break zone. Bring in Big Boy Sephi. You break a backup of theirs. Now, this will now require you to reactivate Cloud, which in Ice Earth isn't going to be easy, but there are ways to do it. You don't have to necessarily be locked to those 2. I would say, you could have the Wind Aerith to reactivate some 7 characters, and you play Cloud, or you use Cloud's ability again, put Sephi into break zone, and you bring in Nidhogg. I mean, if you can execute all that uninterrupted, or mostly uninterrupted, that is 3 cards you've made your opponent discard, you've broken a backup, and you've removed one of the forwards opponents from the game as well, so that's pretty aggressive. For what has probably cost you Dulling Cloud twice and reactivating him once, that's super aggressive. But yeah, that's a nice little combo. I mean, this card combos into so many things because, I mean, 7's one of the best supported games in FFTCG, so the sheer amount of forwards that are coming out, I mean, there's a forward for every CP, basically, which means that you will be able to put any 7 forward into the break zone and bring something else in. You've even got a 1 CP with Kate Sith to be able to bring in a 2 CP one. Why you do that, I don't know, but you know, the options there. But yeah, so there's plenty of options for this guy. Right, another one that barely gets played, but I love this card. Necromancer 7-076C. Pay 2 Earth and 1 colorless, Dull, put Necromancer into the break zone, choose 1 job standard unit in your break zone, play it onto the field. Now I think, again, a lot of things that people don't realise is that you can use this at any point. Your opponent's in his attack phase, he attacks something, you use this bad boy, and you bring in something like Seek, he's a standard unit. There's no stipulation on Necromancer on what the cost it can bring in, the element it can bring in, the card type it can bring in, so forwards, backups, if they ever become monsters, you can bring them onto the field. And that's just an outright break. That's like an Odin on hand for paying 4 and putting Necromancer into the break zone. Obviously, it's not the most cost-efficient thing in the world, but, you know, to have an instant break on hand is nice. Another card I like to run it with is Gareth. Now, it kind of works against itself here because Necromancer, you're putting it into the break zone, but this allows you to run Mono Earth, which is the deck I ran it in. And Gareth, you've got control 5 or more Earth characters, he gains 2k. If you've got Enecro there as well, he's now an 11k. That's huge. He is a big boy. And I think that works really well. But the card that I like to run it with is, you've just taken your 6th point of damage, but your opponent's got another forward to attack with. What do you bring him to the field? Lannister. So, you're paying 4 and putting Necromancer in the break zone to bring in what would be, if you're on 6 points of damage, a 13k forward. If you're Enecro down, a 14k forward. That is huge. Now, I'm not saying it's insurmountable, but to be able to just, you know, offhand, I don't know, Dull 2 backups, discard from hand, put Necromancer in the break zone, or just Dull 2 backups, put Necromancer in the break zone. There's so many ways around it. You can just bring in Lannister. It's huge. And what's also nice is the fact that if your opponent's like, oh, you've got no forwards, but I'm on 6 points of damage, but I can deal you another point of damage, you know, I'll do that. And they leave themselves open. As they go to end their turn, Necromancer brings something onto the field. Oh, all of a sudden, it's basically having a standard unit back attack. I think that's awesome. I think there's obviously standard units are abundant. There's so many of them, but these are a few of the ones that I ran them with, and I really like that little combo. So Jake 8-097H. He's a hard card to get to work. When a forward other than Jake enters the field, that forward gains 4,000 power until the end of the turn. Dull. Choose one forward, it gains haste until the end of the turn. So obviously those two work together. He's another one of those cards though that when he comes onto the field, your opponent's going to probably do a lot to get rid of him, because generally with a card like Jake in your deck, that probably means you've got a fair few cards centered towards him. If you get rid of Jake, you've kind of voided your opponent's deck. So, but yeah, you probably want to bring some sort of, or either don't feature him too heavily in the deck, or bring some sort of protection. But a card I like to run it with is Ramza. So if you've got Jake on the field, Ramza already only costs 5, and he will gain the static 1 from Jake, bring him up to 7. But even if Ramza comes into the field and they're just like, ah, no, I'm going to break Jake. It's like, okay, well, he's still a 10k. He can still swing. Another card it works well with is Lightning. I did this a fair few times. So you play Lightning onto the field. If you've got Lulu down, it's now a 10k with haste, and it returns back to your hand at the end of the turn. Now, I quite like that because it makes her, unless your opponent's got some form of taking her out of your hand, so something along the lines of Zidane, or if there's heavy discard, obviously she can disappear that way. But ultimately, provided you're not discarding out of your hand to play her, and you're just dialing 2 backups, that can be quite annoying to have to deal with, because every time she comes in, haste 9k, haste 9k, haste 9k, all the time, and it's just such a pain. Raubon! Play Raubon onto the field. He is now a 12k, he isn't going to die to his own effect, but he's probably going to kill something. That's quite nice. Pretty simple, but yeah. And Jinai. So yeah, any back attack character really. It will work nicely. There's also Tidus, Scarmelian. I mean, why you wouldn't do it with Tidus, because Tidus you probably wouldn't want to water. But funnily enough, Jake actually works well with the card in the previous slide, Necromancer. So you just bring any standard unit onto the field, block, they've just gained 4k. That was quite funny. But another weird little combo that I like to use, or would like to use, which I haven't actually done this one yet, is Geese. Or Giss, hope you say his name. So, when Giss enters the field, all the forwards your opponent controls lose 1,000 power till the end of the turn. When Giss is dealt damage, your opponent may when Giss is dealt damage, you may remove Geese from the game. If you do so, return Geese onto the field dull, then remove top 3 cards from your deck onto the game. So, you block a Geese, remove him from the game, bring him back in dull. He's now a 12k, which has taken out 1 CP of your opponent's attacking forwards power. You remove 3 from the game, but then you're in water, you might have a Chemist or a Fairy, I think it's Fairy, to reactivate Giss, block. Nice little combo. Right, that is it, everyone. Thank you for watching, I really do appreciate it. Follow me on Twitter, because YouTube reserves the rights to be able to post things for people that actually have followers and, you know, a fairly decent membership. But, yeah, follow me on Twitter, it's at ChocoBilly92, because someone's just got Choco Billy, how dare they. But yeah, if you've got any card combos that you thought were quite funny, put them in the comments below. Let me know what you thought of the video, any improvements, anything, because obviously it's a new series that's going along, so anything you liked or didn't like, let me know, and I'll see you in the next video.